Good evening to you, my dear brothers and sisters across the continent of Africa and our global society. This evening, we like to extend our thanks and appreciation to all of you who will be joining us today as we will be engaged once again into a very unique conversation that is going to enlighten our minds, that is going to prepare us for the future ahead. Today, we will be discussing the African Continental Unity Party. Uh, what promise does it hold for the future of Africa? Or what promise does it hold for uniting the continent of Africa? So this evening, I'd like to invite you to this very important conversation where a distinguished colleague of mine, Kabbalah, will be discussing this political party, or this party, if I should say. He will be giving his perspective. He'll be telling us what this party is all about, what are the philosophy, and how is it geared towards uniting the continent of Africa. So it is by no mistake that you have joined us this evening as we will be discussing this particular topic. So let me quickly once again welcome you and say thank you for joining us. My name is D. Kafinas Nentu, and I'm speaking to you from Liberia. Today I'm joined with Kabbalah from DR Congo. Kabbalah, can you take the next few minutes to just introduce yourself briefly so our listening audience will get to know you?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kafina. My name is Kabbalah from DR Congo, currently residing in South Africa. I'm a member of the ACUP, which is the African Continental Unity Party. I'm also a member of the Free-Minded Organization, which is an academy for the future African leaders in politics and business. I am an author of one book, Expropriation of the Mind Without Compensation. And I'm glad to be here with you, Mr. Kafina.
Thank you so much, Kabbalah. And that's exactly what we will be talking about, the African Continental Unity Party, what that is and what is the future that it brings for uniting the continent of Africa. Once again, gentlemen and ladies, I'd like to welcome you to the People's Talk Show. The People's Talk Show is a part and parcel of the People's News Africa. And the People's News Africa is that platform that teaches you Africa's history, our culture, our politics, our inheritance, our economy, and the way of life of the people of Africa. We brainstorm here and we discuss what can we do and how can we improve the growth and development of the African people, or how can we better up the lives of the African people. So thank you so much for all those who will be joining us. Now, today, like you all know, institutions within the country, specifically political institutions in the country, are established and are geared towards certain particular functions, coming up with different sets of policy programs and procedures that are geared towards improving the quality of life, improving the economy, strengthening regulations within the country, ensuring enforcement, and giving the people of any society that leverage to participate and to become productive members of their community. So institutions are established to regulate the economy, to regulate our social affairs, to regulate even the political spectrum of our respective countries. Some of those institutions, obviously, they are institutions that are direct administrative arm of, say, for instance, the government, like if we should look further into economic institutions like the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Agriculture and the Ministry of Defense and whatever the case may be. But there are other institutions that are like political parties that are established to serve as a kind of, if I should say, a pressure group for the government, okay, or towards the government. So they put a significant amount of pressure on the government as a way of creating a sort of check and balance within the system. So without any political institutions, okay, or if we should say opposition party or whatever the case may be, government will, to understand, feel very complacent about how they carry on the business of the people because no one is bringing them into check and balances. Okay, so these different institutions are very important and they are very critical for the conduct of the state of affairs of our respective nations. Okay, but now in the case of the African Continental Unity Party, we want to know exactly what is the nature of it. So we've brought a studio, one of the brains behind the establishment of the African Continental Unity Party, to explain and to give us a perspective of what the party is. How can we consider that? And what is it geared towards? What are the major philosophies that are driving to this party? How is it different from other political institutions or social institutions that have been established? So, Kabbalah, once again, I'd like to welcome you. And I would just like you to take some time to tell us basically what is this African Continental Unity Party?
Thank you so much, brother Mr. Kafina. The African Continental Unity Party, ACUP, as we call it, it's a newly Pan-African political party that we have just set up in motion last year since August, and which has been significantly doing well in terms of the responses and the feedbacks and also the enthusiasm that we see among African people toward us. People are registering to the party on daily basis, and people are supporting the party, supporting what we do, and we are actually seeing a great future as we are moving forward with this political party. Well, in terms of what is the ACUP, ACUP, it's a political party that transcends the borders. You know, we have for a long time defined ourselves in the definition that were given to us by the colonial masters. We have never tried to look at things in a different perspective, and most importantly, African perspective. We have for a long time wanted to define ourselves, to do things in a way that was, traced, or the way that was obviously we have inherited by our colonial masters, which cannot really help us. What do I mean by that is we have tried for a long time to find, for example, if you are born in the Congo, we have been trying to find the Congolese solution to our problem. The people who are born in South Africa, we're trying to find the South African solution to their problems. The people who are born in Nigeria and Gambia, likewise, everyone is looking individually to the solution to his problem. And since 1960s, the period from which Africa began to get what we call today the African independence, which is an illusion of independence. We have seen that these individual solutions that we have been trying have not succeeded. So we believe that in this moment, it is a time that we should be now moving away from Congolese solution, from Zimbabwe solution, from Ghanaian solution, in order to implement the African solution. And that is true because what was destroyed by the colonial masters was not Congo. When the when the colonial masters came from Europe to Africa, they didn't come for Congo, for Nigeria, for Zimbabwe. They came for Africa. And that is what was destroyed. And if we want to find solution to our problem, we must begin by finding the African solution to our problem. And once we solve the African solution, we'll definitely solve our unique and individual solutions. So the ACUP is a response to that perspective, definitely, because we even believe we can even put it furthermore to put it to state that the concept through which we have defined ourselves of being a Nigerian, a Ghanaian, a Zimbabwean, Senegalese are the definition left by colonial masters, by our imperial masters, because none of African founding father never invented Senegal. None of the African founding father never invented Congo. Kwame Nkrumah never invented Ghana. Patrice Lumumba did not invent the Congo. Congo is the invention of our colonial masters. And if we are still defining ourselves in the inventions that were made by our colonial masters and oppressors with the aim to oppress us, we're becoming contributing factors to our own oppression, our own suffering. So the African Continental Unity Party comes to break those barriers, but we start by breaking them at the psychological level in order to obviously embark on the physical level where we see Africa united and Africa emerging again great, Africa emerging again prosperous, as we wish all of us as children of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that elaboration. Let me just make sure that I get a few things very clearly. Have you or did you measure how is this party expected to function and to be able to influence the political systems across Africa?
Yes, indeed. The strategy is very simple. Africa's got 54 states, and myself being born in the Congo, I might be familiar somehow with the situation in African overall perspective, but I might not really know in detail things that are happening deep in the country. So what we do, we raise awareness around the continent, and we get the people from the continent that we train, and we give the proper training so that they can represent the party. And through these people being aware of their own conditions, their own situations, and most importantly, their own local policies, they will be able to implement the party and run the party from the local regions. That is how we're trying to get this this party implemented and functioning. So it's not even matter of how we should do this. It's actually the matter of whether Africans are ready or not for this revolutionary movement.
Okay, so now let me ask you again about your concluding statement. Are Africans actually ready to embrace this political party?
Yes, I think that Africans have been actually looking for something different from what we have embraced for a long time. You see, what we have so far since 1960s, the so-called democratic system, the Western fashion democratic system of 3, 4, and 6 years of you going to vote, and after that you sit down to be somewhere somehow oppressed systematically by the same people that you voted for, because they don't now do things to help you, they do things to help the people who pay their campaigns, the people who selected them, because you just elected them. So in other words, I'm trying to say that Africans have been very much frustrated about this system that is not resolving our problem. Our conditions are worsening on daily basis, and our employment is decreasing in Africa, and our economic situation is really getting bad and bad. Our health system is getting bad and bad on daily basis, so to say. So there is frustration, a generalized frustration among African people. And if you know, in the history, it's frustration that always precedes any revolution. For any revolution to take place, whether you talk about the French Revolution, whether you talk about the Russian Revolution, or you talk about the Arab Spring Revolution, all were preceded by a kind of frustration among the population. However, people have been frustrated, but they don't know where to take their frustration. They don't know how to handle their frustration. Sometimes we see people going down the street burning cars and burning shops, which is not a proper way to handle frustration, because we believe that now revolution should be something that is in the mind. It's no longer something that should be implemented on streets and burning cars and burning shops and looting other shops somewhere somehow. It should be something that should be taking place in the mind. It should be an intellectual process. So what I'm trying to say is that Africans are frustrated right now, but many of them, they don't even know the nature of their frustration and how to handle the frustration. So through the activities that we've been doing so far, we have seen how enthusiastic Africans are welcoming this organization. So it's really showing that we'll be able to tap in the frustration of the people and then implement the party. So in other words, people will be receiving this organization because it's something new and something that actually speaks to the frustration that is actually that is gaining the most part of the African population.
Okay, so thank you so much, Kabbalah, for that clarification. Now, let me bring it a little bit back home to ask you how many countries have you had membership so far? And how is it looking like? Are you going through national registration process to get the party registered in individual countries, or how is it being structured?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Firstly, we have members coming from all over the continents, and our sister and brothers abroad in the diaspora are also joining the party, supporting the party, and also subscribing to donating to the party, which is a very good thing, and which is actually where we are relying, financially speaking. Well, now in terms of how do we going to register the party? Exactly as I said, people from their own countries, in terms of their own policies, they will have to implement to register the party in their own countries according to their laws and regulation. So as we're moving forward, we get to the point where the African Continental Unity Party will have a branch registered in every most of obviously our wish is to cover the whole continent, but it can only go as far as the commitment of every African people demonstrated itself. Because, as you know, African seems to be multi-racial. We have the Maghreb region where it's mostly Arab people who, in most cases, always identify themselves with Arab people than identifying themselves with African people. So it will depend on their position. However, we are willing to cover the whole continent of Africa. So, briefly answering your question, yes, the members who join the party from their countries are the ones who will be helped, will be guided to implement the party in their countries, and will be also registering the party in their countries. And that's how we're going to be running from the starting until we gain the prominence that will help us and influence that will enable us to change certain policies fundamentally and to implement a common policy that will obviously unite Africa in a most efficient way.
Okay, so now before I conclude my question on the issue of the registration, I just like to find out if you currently have any country now where this particular party has been registered and has had all its legal documents to operate and to function as a political party,
Well,
other than
the
just
ACU.
having international membership, which is very significant.
Well, the ACUP's got an organization that is called the Free Minded, which I said is a school, an academy for the future African leaders in politics and in business. That academy is registered and the head office is in South Africa. However, the ACUP as such is not yet registered in any country in Africa, but we have a good membership continentally. But when we structure that membership in terms of countries, is not yet enough to register as a political party. Because, as you know, in order for you to register in as a political party in countries, there are different countries with different regulations. For example, in South Africa, you're going to have to provide something like a 500 membership people that have registered to the party, and also other regulations. In other countries, that number can be maybe 5 million, 1 million or 500. So it depends. So we are not yet registered, but we are getting there. Right now, we have, an establishment in Zimbabwe. We have also an establishment in Zambia, also in South Sudan. We are also in South Africa. So we're moving progressively. We will see where we will begin by registering the party first in terms of how we get to deal with local regulation and restrictions or policies, so to say. Thank you.
Okay, and currently, how many people do you have who are members of this party? Not including those who have subscribed to the party either on Facebook or other social media networks, but people who names and number and other bio data that you have currently that you can work with, that you can call your members, whether in Africa or across the Africa, if you have any statistics on that.
Well, indeed, we I don't have statistics as complete as yet, but we have a lot of people that have already registered. As you said, because the formal registration is what people do through our website, by obviously subscribing through our website, by providing the membership motivation, and by name details and motivation, joining the party, all those kind of stuff. We have many people that have joined. I don't just have a conclusive number right now yet, but we have a lot of people from different countries, as I said, and also from abroad that have joined the party so far.
Okay, now let's come to the issue of the structure. How is this political party based structure? What is the structure looking like?
A fundamental thing that we have brought, which seems to be a very significant different from what has been existing so far, is the fact that we are not structured on the philosophy of a leader against followers. As you may notice around, many political parties function on that philosophy of one charismatic leader who comes to attract followers to him. And the inconvenience that we have seen with that philosophy, especially when as Africa is concerned, is that whenever that particular charismatic leader on which the movement was structured, whenever he gets killed, because that's what is happening to many of our leaders, or whenever he gets incarcerated or shut down by different ways, the movement also goes on halts, because people now, they don't have anymore the person on which or on whom they have built the enthusiasm and membership to the party. So what we have done now, we don't have any leader in this organization. The only thing that leads the party and everybody who comes to the party is the vision that we have. And that vision is that, as I said earlier on, is the vision of the African global power base. What we want to build is the African global power base. And that vision is what guides and leads every person who joins the party. There's not a single leader against followers. That is the fundamental structure that we have implemented as a political party.
Okay, so is it as of now that's the structure that you have, or you intend to diversify this particular structure further? Because it seems to me that if this must be a political party from whence we will have representation at any other level, there must be a leader that can represent the interests of the members or the people who this party tend to represent. So do you have in mind a structure of such where we have people representing the institution? Even the point that you raised, that there is no one particular institution, rather we have the vision that everyone is going to subscribe, or that everyone is subscribing to. We must have someone who is translating those vision, the goals and the objective of the organization into the members that are coming on board, such that it is very clear, it is very emphatic, and it is something that we are all working towards.
All right, we have a league, the league team, where you find the league members. However, those league members fulfill certain functions. They are those who deal with communication. There are some who deals with secretariats. There are some who deals with admins. There are some who deals with mobilization, fundraisings. It means every league member has a particular function that it plays within the league team. However, there's no, as I said, there's no a single leader on whom we have structured the organization. The only leader that we have is the vision. The only leader that we have is the vision, and all of us we follow the vision. So the leading structure, if I can put it in your context, is the league member, where you have members that are playing different roles. For example, I'm dealing with the communication. So anytime if I get to be taken down by the imperialists, the enemies of Africa, anybody else can replace me to deal with the works of communication. So I'm not very much important to the party and to the African people, only the vision. However, the vision is something that you cannot kill or destroy. Let me emphasize more. Why do we want to put this structure? Whenever a person comes to proclaim himself a leader, in this particular case of Africa, a person comes to say, I'm a leader of Africa. I want to take Africans out of this slavery to get them in the promised land, which is maybe the land of freedom. It implies that that leader must have been there first, where he wants to lead other people. It implies that that leader must have been first there, which means he must have been free first in order to know what it takes to get other people to the state of freedom where he has been. But as far as we are concerned, none of us can claim to be free. In this world, whenever you born as African people, you automatically born in between a group of people who are considered the prisoners, who are considered slaves. And whenever you are born as a white person, you are born in a group of people who are considered oppressors of other people. Systematically speaking, or systemically speaking, that is how it is. No matter the money that you have, no matter how money you have, no matter how prominent you tend to become as African person, as long as you have a black skin on you, according to the white supremacist system in which we live in, you are the category of people who are classified as worthy to be enslaved and to be oppressed. So you are not yet free, and you don't know what it takes to be free because you don't control even your own economy. So it's going to be difficult for you to portray yourself as a leader of the enslaved people while you are yourself a slave. So what we want to do, what we have found as a strategy to implement, is to teach every person the value of freedom. It means to get the vision that we have understood or grasped by every people. So all of us, we will be working to achieve that vision, and automatically we will be contributing to ourselves, to our weaknesses, to our locks, and then we achieve to achieve that state of freedom that we all want to achieve, obviously. So in other words, we are coming with a leadership that is based on philosophy of super leadership. If you know about what is super leadership, is a leadership that turns to transform other people to become leaders. It means you lead to make others to become leaders. So we believe in education than only making speech that follow me, I will make you free. We have had many of those kind of leaders, but Africa has never changed. So this is a completely different philosophy whereby all of us, we don't know what it takes to be free because none of us has been free. So we have to sit together and design a plan that we think can achieve our desire of freedom that we want to achieve, and begin to implement that, all of us at the grassroots level and those who have prominency in our societies. We do that together and we'll be able to achieve greatness rather than staying in the same philosophy that has never helped us to emerge in anyhow.
Okay, thank you. Still on the issue of the leadership. So in other words, if we should summarize, we are saying that the party does not have a formal leadership structure.
No. I say that the structure, the leading structure is the league member or the league team, so to say. And within the league team, we have members who are called league members. There's no president. If I have to answer to your question differently, there's no president, there's no vice president. They are only a structure that is called league team, within which we have league members. And those league members each plays a role, because what is important here is the role that each one of us has to play in this liberating movement. I'm communicating member. I deal with the communication. That is my role. I mean, that is what is important to the African people. My duty is to communicate the vision and the mission of the party to the African people. My mission is to, wherever there's a need on our members that require communication, I handle that. That is what I do. I mean, that is actually the real need that is there to people. There's no real need in terms of a president or whatever. There's only need to fulfill functions that can make the movement grow forward. I do the communication. There's other members who deal with fundraising. There are other members who deal with mobilization. There are other members who deal with for example, secretariats. And that is all the duties that we are supposed to fulfill to get the movement working forward. However, the ultimate leader that we have is the vision. You must understand that when you join the ACUP, the vision is the building of the African global power base. In order to achieve that global power base, we have to do A, B, C, D. And that everyone have to understand that. And by doing that, we might even achieve better than what we have achieved by having one single leader who gets shot tomorrow and the movement goes away.
Okay, so now one of the last questions before we move forward to another round of discussion is what is the philosophy on the issue of representation, assuming that now you have this party has been registered in many countries? What is the framework that you put in place to stir or to initiate representation, and what level of representation might the party be anticipating? Is it for presidency or representation in the parliament, at the judiciary? Basically, what is your structure on that?
We want to conquer the African political arena. It means that we do not just want to play around insignificancy. We want to reach the level where we win the presidency of countries, and then we now implement our revolutionary structure, or continentally speaking, so that Africa can see a difference from what we have been seeing, which we have obviously inherited from the Eurocentric views. So we have the opportunity to come up with something that defines who we are as African people.
Okay, thank you so much, Kabbalah. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so far for being a part of the conversation. This is the People's Talk Show. The People's Talk Show is a part and parcel of the People's News Africa. And the People's News Africa is the platform where we discuss issues like this, where we discuss the politics and the culture, the economy, and the history of Africa, where we discuss issues relative to Africa's development, our prosperity, and how we redeem the African continent. Today, we've been reviewing the African Continental Unity Party, a political party that has been established to address critical issues across the continent of Africa. And today, I've been discussing with Kabbalah from DR Congo, is currently based in South Africa. My name is D. Kafinas Nentu, and we want to thank you so far for being a part of the conversation. Now we are transitioning to the second segment of our conversation. Kabbalah, once again, let me say thank you for being with me still on this particular platform where we are looking into the issue of the ACUP. Now, I want to find out for you, before the ACUP was being established, there were other similar movements like this. There were other similar political party like this. How is this party different from that of previous party that have been established with almost similar vision of uniting the continent of Africa and promoting a political environment where Africa is free from these sort of imperialist encroachment into the continent of Africa?
Well, of course, we have heard and we still have many movements around the continent that claim to be Pan-African, that claim to be in that endeavor of liberating Africa. However, in most cases, people are trying to improve their condition within the system without actually addressing the system, or without attempting to change the same system. You see, there was a time in America where people used to sing as, we came in the revolution and we got out of we came out of the revolution with jobs, and the revolution died. It means that many Pan-Africans, they don't have a problem with the system that has oppressed Africa for many years. However, they have a problem with their position within the system. So it means when people go into that revolutionary movement, or actually in their Pan-Africanism, whenever they get approached with a job or a function in the government, well, the revolution stops, because you went in the revolution because you didn't have a job, because you didn't have a recognition, socially speaking. Once you get that, obviously that's your end result, and there's no more need for you to be a revolutionary speaking. But us, we do not come here to seek for job or to seek for position within the government. We are seeking to change the entire system. And what makes a difference, what put a difference between one organization and another, is the fundamental policy or structure that is being laid down by every organization. As us, we have a different philosophy when it comes to economy. We have a different philosophy when it comes to political system, and we even have a different policy when it comes to the structure of the organization. As I've just explained, that we don't have a leader and a followers structure, but we have a structure that is based on the fact that the vision should be leading the movement and not individual, and all of us should be following the vision. This is automatically something different. I've never seen any organization in Africa that is having this kind of structure that we have, and I don't see any organization in Africa that is having our economic philosophy as well as our political philosophy, even our family structure philosophy. So we are totally different, and we are pursuing something different, which is to change automatically, entirely the system, rather than improving our conditions within the system and let the system there.
Okay, now you just struck exactly the next area that I was coming about. What is contained in the particular philosophy that you have. So I will appreciate if you take the next few minutes until the end of the conversation to expand into those different areas, like the kind of economic philosophy that you have. Is it something that is being structured or being built similar to that of the capitalist system, the socialist system, and the communist system? And or if it is not the case, how is it different from these different systems of economic? Before we go to the area of governance and the rest of the other areas that we might be talking about later on.
All right, thank you very much. First of all, we are not pro-capitalism. We are not neither socialist nor communist. We believe that as African people, we should be able to come up with our own economic system that is structured on the basis of our problems today, and also on the basis of our resources in order to solve our problem. I don't think that the history of the world will end with capitalism or socialism or communism. There are many, many ways that we can address our issues. We just have to consider ourselves intelligent enough to come up with a philosophy that can address our economic problem. Well, we have come up with an economic philosophy that we call the katikati economy or economic system. Katikati is a Swahili word that means in the between. Katikati economic system, and that is inspired on the fact that on the basis of what we call generally sustainable development. And let me define what is sustainable development. It is a development that sustainable development simply means that the use of the resources, in order to create the economy by the current generation, should ensure that the future generations will have also the opportunity to rely on the same resources. It means that you must use the resources by also making sure that they don't get depleted. The future generations can use also the same resources in order to obviously develop themselves economically speaking. The problem that we have in the current economic system, which is the capitalist system, is that there's no limits, first of all, on the level of wealth expansion that one individual can make. Let me rephrase myself. there's no a kind of limitation on how much wealthy one individual can become in this current society. Let me give you a simple statistics. In 2016, the uh, uh, what is this NGO? Uh, sorry, I forgot the name. In 2016, it published the statistic that showed that only 62 people had the wealth of the half of the world population in 2016. And 1 year later, only 8 men had the wealth equivalent to the half of the world population. And that simply shows that the wealth accumulation is happening, in a very high speed, in a way that it's possible that one day one person can earn as much as the wealth, the half of the world population. It's even possible that one day one individual can earn the entire planets, because the simple philosophy of capitalism is privatization of everything, making everything private. Today, yesterday they have been millionaires, and today they are billionaires. They are reaching to have trillions. And what is the end goal? To own the entire planet. That is the end goal, right? So, what about the world population that is increasing? So, what I'm trying to say is that there's no a kind of regulation or limit on how one person or one individual can accumulate wealth, while the resources over which the wealth is created are limited. The oil, we know that the oil is limited. We know that the gold is limited. We can exploit all these resources, and they can get depleted. However, there's no limits on how one individual can amass wealth, can accumulate wealth. And that is the major problem with the capitalism system. And that is what we fundamentally want to address. Because what is happening is that when these people who today have already 200 billion US dollars on themselves, tomorrow they will have trillions, and in certain years to come, they can be able to buy the entire country, or they can even be able to buy the entire continent. So what about our future, and what about ourselves? What about our kids? Isn't that the same as slavery? If one individual can be able to buy the entire country, for example, it becomes a private property. There's a book written by Professor Robinson. In his research, he found that as we're speaking right now, there's no many major areas in which the capitalist can invest money in order to have returns, major returns or high returns, as they usually do. However, there are only maybe 3 areas that are left for them, because most of areas have been, invested in. As we're speaking now, there's only maybe wars and war preparation, which is the area that brings more money to the capitalists. The second area, according to Professor Robinson, the second area is the privatization of all the public-owned institutions. It means they are now willing to buy public companies, public-owned institutions, to make them private. And the third area is, I think, risk management, something like that, according to his explanation. So it shows you that they have intention to privatize the entire planet, so that one day the entire planet will become a private property of one single person. That is why they're even pushing more and more the policy of neoliberalism. If you want development, you must open the markets. You must open the markets. You must privatize. You must all these things that they are pushing within our countries, which simply means that we will become at some point owned entirely by 1 or 2 families, richest family in the world. So what we have brought within the Katikati economy is that every society, according to its resources, must have a higher limit on how people can get wealthy. It means when you get to that level of, of the top higher level of wealthy in that particular society, whatever that you make as benefit will be trickled down to also subsidize other people, so that we can have a society that is balanced, so that we can reduce the inequalities. That is obviously, that is really, that is really worrying in our society, as it is a capitalist society as we're speaking right now. And also that will also release the pressure that we are putting in our environment. The reason why we have put more pressure on the environment is because everyone knows that there's no limit on how I can become wealthy. So anyway, I have to exploit more and more resources. I don't care about the future generation. I don't care about other people who also have the equal right to the same resources. I can do whatever I can do. I can build technology that can that can facilitate, that can even multiply the exploitation of resources, because there's no limits. When we put the limits, now people know that once I get, for example, 20 billion US dollars in this specific society, I cannot go further. There's no more need to put more pressure to the environment. So other people will also have access to the same environment, also to build also their own economic conditions. And then there will be no more need for monopoly, economic monopoly in the society, because anyway, there's a limit. You cannot just grow exponentially without any kind of limit, without any kind of regulation. There's a limit in everything. You have a limit on the amount of food that you can eat. You have a limit on the amount of water you can drink. You have a limit even on the number of years that you can take to live on this earth. There should be also limits on how one can become wealthy within a society. And that statistic will be evaluated in the context and in terms of how much a particular country or community disposes in terms of the natural resources, and then the evaluation will be drawn, will be made, and the number will be drawn out of that evaluation on how much wealthy one person can get in this particular society. Just before I finish, the statistic that I said earlier on, it was published by the Oxfam International. Sorry, that word just went away, but it was Oxfam International who published the statistic that I came up with. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kabbalah. I hear you talking about putting limit on that which or how much one can own. How do you determine that particular threshold to say this is how much one will be able to own, and this is how much one cannot own? How will you be able to determine such a threshold? What are the criteria? What are the yardstick you'll be using to measure what one should own and what ability? What one cannot own. So how do you look at people's ability of owning certain amount, and how do you also factor in those who cannot exercise that particular or probably who do not have the ability to be able to earn certain limits, or to, if I should say, to own certain things? Okay, because I'm understanding that the Katikati system of economic is a kind of one that reflects the political and economic experiences of the African society. Okay, so how do you balance actually between certain limits on what one should be able to have or to own and what one cannot own? How can those who do not have the ability at all to own any of what the threshold may be fit into the system?
All right, thank you so much. First of all, we do not focus on individuals. We focus on the society. And this philosophy is based on the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Ubuntu simply means that I am because you are. However, the European philosophy is based on individualism. It's all about me and for me. And African society in African history, we have not functioned according to that philosophy of individualism. We have functioned according to the philosophy of collectivism, which means I am because you are. That means Ubuntu. So that is why it is necessary for one to have his economic development up to a certain point. Then it must also give a chance to others to also have the same opportunity. That's why we have a projection in the future. So how do we do that? We have a means already right now to determine how much of resources one particular country can have. For example, in South Africa, we know that South Africa disposes of about 50 billion tons of coal. We have already know that number. Those that coal can be exploited within certain number of years. We have that estimation, and exactly that is what's going to determine how many. I mean, how much one individual can become. How much wealthy one individual can become within this particular society. It means we will balance the number of disposable resources of a country against the population of that country in terms of the future, how growth that population will be expand, and also we from that balance will come up with the number that can reflect how wealthy one individual can become in this particular society. Is the same thing that you do with what you call GDP, which is GDP per capita, which is the gross national per capita, which means the amount of money that the country has generated divided by each and every single person within that particular country. However, GDP is a fake because it does not reflect how money get to be distributed among the people in that society. It gives you the number of the money of the country distributed to the people, which is not real, because that money can be 80% owned by 20% of the population, which is not really the true reflection of the entire population. So we will base our calculations on the evaluation of the resources of the country and the demography of the country, and the number will come that reflect how much one can become wealthy in that society. However, what I've just given you is the kind of backbone, a skeleton of the economic system, but there will be more, statistics on and calculations done by experts in economy and specialists of every country in order to come up with a number that can obviously reflect the aspiration of every society. So we are not focusing on individual people, we are focusing on the entire society, and the aim is to create at least the condition where the extreme inequality that we have in our society today can be reduced, and we can create a society whereby one, he developed himself by thinking also about his brother and sisters, which is Ubuntu and the philosophy of African people. Thank you.
Now, last question before I move forward to the next component. Realistically speaking, how feasible do you think this katikati system of economy is likely to be adopted by the people of Africa?
Well, first of all, people of Africa are very, very enthusiastic about the philosophy of Ubuntu, which is our philosophy. And secondly, the masses of people in Africa are languishing in poverty and living in extreme conditions. So they will not really argue about any policy that obviously give them the opportunity to also tap in the economic condition or in the resources of their countries in order to develop themselves. And in terms of pragmatically speaking, the first thing that we want to gain is the political power, because the political power is what organizes other aspects of every society. Is the politics that organize the economy? Is the politics that organize the legal system of every society? Is the politics that also organize the education system of the society? So once we get the political power, by obviously having this message, we will be able to implement obviously what we want to achieve. And if I explain to you our economics, our political system,
let me just hold you there, since you are gradually coming to the next question that I should be asking you. What is the political philosophy of this ACUP? I mean, you already started talking about the issue of power. How is it going to be different from the democratic system that has been imposed upon African? Or what will it be called? Like you have the category system of economy already. What model of governance are you going to be adopting? And then I want you to also combine that with the mode of education that we must practice because we don't have time. So I just want you to quickly combine the two, and then let's see how far we can go.
Thank you very much. Our political system is called the African inclusive democracy. It's not the Western democracy that we.
Sorry that I have to interrupt you. It slipped my mind when I wanted to follow up on when you said the Katikati system is based. I mean, then you talk about the sustainable development. I wanted to ask you how likely are these different systems going to be devoid from these Western development concepts and practices that we have adopted? Because I hear you talking about the sustainable development, and I'm hearing you bringing in this democratic process. What? Why can't we think about an independent name? Like you have the Katikati system. Why must we go back to the issue of democratic system, but modifying the name such that it suits our context?
All right, the same question that you've asked is same as the question that people ask about Marcus Garvey when he was calling African Negroes. People asking, why would Marcus Garvey really wanting to liberate African people, but still calling them Negroes, the name that white men were using? The fact is that African people have embraced these things, have internalized these words. So it's quite going to be difficult for you to bring a different concept that will be accepted easily. So you have to tap into what has been accepted, but bring a different guideline, which is obviously going to be different from what has been existing.
I thought this is the reason why we should look at it as a kind of movement, a social movement that should incorporate and revolve around the people themselves being involved, such that we create mass education, or we create a level of awareness such that people are getting to understand that we are rebuilding systems, we are creating institutions, or we are building institutions and coming up with systems that reflect our culture, that reflect our experiences, and that resonate with our belief and our tradition and whatever we believe in hold us together as African people, other than putting forth, or if I should say, wanting to build a kind of consensus or agreed upon things that has been agreed upon already. Then, in my opinion, it doesn't make any significant difference, right? Because relatively, the concept is going to be the same anyhow. Okay, as long as the
No,
name can be the same, the concept is likely to be the same, because you mentioned
no,
the issue of the sustainable development. The practice, the concept is the same. Nothing has changed.
no, not at all, not at all. One thing that you have to remember is that as African people, we suffer what we suffer, not because of what we call ourselves, not because of the names that we use to call one or two things. We suffer what we suffer because of what we don't do for ourselves. The question is not how you call it. The question is
Yeah,
what you
but
do.
if the philosophy, if the concept,
Yeah.
the ideology behind the name, if it still persists, then there is no need to introduce anything different. Or except you tell me now, how is the sustainable development in the context of the Katikati economy is different from that of the sustainable development that we are talking about, that you and I know is not something that has derived from us. It's not our own concept. It's not our ideology. This is a practice that we have agreed on to move along with, right? That every country now has inculcated into the governance system and that we are working towards, which are like a kind of goals and objective that we want to accomplish globally, right? So if the Katikati economy is modeled after key principles of sustainable development, then it doesn't make any significant difference.
No,
That's
no,
the
no.
point
It's
that
not
I'm
key
trying to stress.
principle. No, it's not the key principle of sustainable development. Sustainable development is an aspect that I've just mentioned to show what we want to achieve. However, the definition of the sustainable development that I've mentioned is not a Western definition. It is a UN recognized definition. It means is the United Nations definition of the sustainable development. It's not purely a Western definition
But
of the sustainable development.
you and I know the structure of the United Nations. You and I know how the United Nations is be run. You and I know the power behind the United Nations, how they get their support and how they operate. Okay, and you and I know that Africa been one of the continents with the most numbers of countries, and that should have a very substantive representation at the United Nations, and yet we don't have. We all know the politics behind that. So we cannot have something coming from the United Nations and we want to embrace and say, yes, it's from us. If we know the
No, no, no,
politics behind what the United Nations is.
no. I want you to. Okay, I understand your point, but I want you to get my point at the this specific point, right? I mentioned the sustainable development because of the philosophy behind it. One thing that you have to remember is this: some of the things that are coming from the Western world, the concept can be correct. However, the practice always goes against the concept, if you see what I mean. For example, when we talk about democracy, the rule of the people, by the people, for the people, it's a very important concept and it's actually brilliant. But however, the practice of the Western democratic system is not exactly uh, uh, in line with the definition of the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. I will get back to that. But what I'm trying to emphasize about the sustainable development is the fact that is a development that emphasizes that we should be using our resources by thinking about the future generation that are coming behind us. And that's very important because I believe that 50% of success, I mean, the success in every person's life depends 50% on what the parents did for them. As a parent, you have a responsibility to think of your children and to make sure that there's a space for them to grow. So, as African, this generation, we have diamonds, we have gold, we have platinum, we have oil that are being abused in terms of how they get to be exploited. The trees are being chopped down because the same people who said don't cut the trees are the ones who cut the trees and make papers for us. So we have to embrace truly the philosophy that we need to preserve these things, to use them systematically in preserving them for the future generation. That is where I mentioned the sustainable development, because that is the idea within the sustainable development. And from there, I said our economic system is based on the fact that we have to release the pressure that people put on the environment. So by putting the limits on how one can become wealthy, we will automatically put we automatically put less pressure on the environment, on how people explore the environment. The reason why people are putting more pressure on the environment is because they know there's no limit on how they can become wealthy. And when these minerals get depleted, what are we going to do? What are our children going to do? Already, the white supremacists have begun to colonize the Mars. They will go to the Mars. And what about us, African people? And when they say that Africa is the future, we must put in mind it's not Africans who are the future, it's African resources, which is the future of other people. So we have to build a means to defend and protect this. So I don't know if I've made sense to you.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Now I want you to go to the model of governance and that of education.
Thank you very much. I was mentioning that our political system is called the African Inclusive Democracy, which which means that, for example, not for example, sorry. When you look at the current democratic system, the definition is good, but the practice is wrong. They tell you that the democracy is the rule of the people, by the people, and for the people. However, you only participate in a democratic system in the rule of your country after every 5 years, or after every 6 years, or after every 4 years, according to your election cycle, in order to elect the people who have been selected by the people that you don't know, and the campaign have been paid for the people that you don't know. And what happens most of times is that these people who, when they come in power, after we have elected them, when they come in power, they do most of things to benefit a class, uh, a class of what is called the transnational capitalist class. People who have funded their campaigns, people who selected them to become, to become in the public offices. That's what they do. They don't do things to benefit us people at the grassroots. That is what is happening. Let me explain this in another words. You see, in some 100 years ago, our nations were ruled by the priests, by religious people who were at the same time politician, or at the same time the political power. You can remember the Pope in the past. The Pope used to have political power as much as religious power, until politicians, pure politicians, came to power and pushed religious out of the power. And then politicians became now the leaders of our nations. And now we are in a transition whereby economists, not even economists in a word, but the transnational capitalist class, the people who manage the economy of the world, are now in charge. They want to push the politician out of the power in order for them to handle our nations. And they only pursue one thing, which is the wealth expansion and privatization of the whole world, as I've just explained through the presentation of the Katikati economy. So as we're speaking right now, our politicians are in the hands of these money handlers, who obviously, as I said, they select politicians and they pay for their campaigns, and they get politicians published through their medias, so that the politicians will only implement the agenda or the policy of neoliberal, which profits not to the mass of the people who voted for the politicians, but only to the money handlers who want to tap into every areas of the society and get more and more wealthy at the expenses of the masses of the people. This is the reality right now. There's no need to explain. I've just told you the statistic from the Oxfam International. So how do we redeem our institutions from the hands of the money handlers, the globalists who handle the economy of the world? How do we redeem our institutions? Is by giving power to people, because what they do it through lobbying. It means that they bring policies to our representatives, the so-called representatives, and who also implement these policies. And us as a people, we suffer the consequences. So the African inclusive democracy stand on the principles that people have to be involved on every policies that have a major impact on the society. It means when the policy is studied in the parliament, in the legislature, before it get to be promulgated by the president, it must be subjected to the mass votes of the people. And then when people understand that policy and its impact in the society, they will be able now to evaluate the policy, whether it should be passing or it should not be passing. And if people say no, then the policy is not going to pass. And if people say yes, this is fine, then the policy get to be promulgated by the president or by whoever has the power to promulgate the particular policy within the society. So in this sense, what we do is to give more power to people, that people must be involved, people must participate in every aspect of the society. Every policy, every regulation that has a major change, major impact on the society, whether in terms of passing on the markets, whether in terms of liberalizing the markets, whether in terms of changing the structure of the market, whether in terms of education, it must be subjected to the public vote. People must have input. People must say yes or no, because the people
Okay.
are the
Okay, so
because
sorry for disrupting you. We have limited time, so I would just like you to go into the area of education quickly, and then we just very quickly.
well, the education, overall education, has to be restructured. There are four fundamental reasons why education has to be given to every person. The first reason why somebody has to be educated, or the first thing that education brings in someone's life, is to teach that person about his environment, where he lives, the resources that are there, the opportunities that may come there, overall aspects of the environment. The second element that education brings in someone's life is the tools or the means that will enable the person to influence or to change or to affect his environment. In other words, education provides the tools that will help the person to transform his environment and to create his economic condition. The third element that education brings in people's life is the socialization. You cannot succeed as one individual if you are not a part of the society. And the last thing that education has to bring to people is the sense of patriotism. You must be able to love your country. You must be able to love your continent and not betray it. However, the education that we have that is designed, because we're still having a educational system designed by aliens who are not familiar with our environments, who are not even willing to have us interacting with our environment or interacting with each other. This education cannot firstly teach us about our environment. Secondly, it cannot give us the tools that we need to transform our environment. It cannot even help us to socialize ourselves, and it cannot even give us the sense of patriotism. It's only alienating us to become little British, little French, and little Portuguese instead of being who we are as African people. And the reason why this education system has failed, it can be seen in what we do as African people. We have the land, we have the resources, we have the platinum, we have all these things, but African people are dying on the Mediterranean water in order to join Greece, in order to join Spain, and then sweep the street of Spain and Greece, because they are not familiar with their environments, and they've not been given the tools to transform their environment. So the African Continental Unity Party, through its institution called the Free Minded, we are coming with education system that will provide the knowledge of our environment to every African people, as well as the tools necessary to transform our environment, as well as the social condition where we get to socializing ourselves and then support ourselves, and most importantly, with a sense of patriotism. We all want to be part of the country or the country called the Africa, where we have developed the sense of patriotism. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Kabbalah. Unfortunately, we don't have so much time anymore. But I will just ask you one more question that we can. I will appreciate if you can address that in like 1 minute. Um, and that is the question of unity. So, with everything being said, how is the ACUP going to promote unity across the continent of Africa?
We don't believe that unity can be achieved by speech, by calling African people to come and unite, sorry. Because as we're speaking right now, white supremacy as a system has diametrically divided African in a way that is not easy to unite us with a speech or with a story. However, there's other way to unite African people. We all have needs as African people, wherever we happen to be, from Gambia, from Angola, from Tanzania, we have a needs. So if we can, if we can set up a goals that can address the needs of every African people, and then push all African people to achieve these goals, we will find ourselves united around those goals. For example, you can find a bunch of animals who are fighting each other, but once you throw a meat in between them, they will all go to eat the meat and they will unite themselves in around that meat that you put amongst them. It's the same as African people. We have to set the goals and present those goals to African people, those goals that are being structured in terms of our needs as African people. And the most important need of every African person, men and women, is the need for freedom. So now we structure these goals and then we emphasize these goals to African people and we encourage them to work to achieve the goal of freedom. As all of us are going to work to achieve the goals of freedom, we will find ourselves united around the objectives. In other words, to briefly answer your question, the goals will unite African people, but not the speech. And what African Continental Unity Party is trying to do is to set up the goals that African will be pursuing. By pursuing those goals, all of us will find ourselves once again united as one people fighting for our freedom and liberation from the system of white supremacy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Kabbalah. As a way of giving your parting comment, I would like you to state clearly where do you expect this ACUP to go in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, we will be able already to be campaigning for presidency in different countries in Africa. This year already, we have a goal to achieve 1 million plus membership. The next year, we will triple that number. And then in 5 years, we will be able to obviously run for presidency in different countries in Africa. And then by 20 years, we will be obviously have African Continental Unity Party leading Africa. And then obviously liberating Africa from the yoke of slavery and servitude that we have suffered and our ancestors have suffered for a long time.
Thank you so much, Kabbalah. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you so much for being a part of this very unique conversation. We've been looking at the African Continental Unity Party and been assessing what promised us a hope for uniting the continent of Africa. And we want to thank all those who have contributed through their messages and for watching the program or who have been watching the program. We are so grateful. It is because of you that we are here. Without you, there will be no talk show like this. And we believe that this continent of ours can make significant progress, can move ahead if we jointly work together to solve the differences and to solve the common problems that we have. So we make it our business every Saturday to come and discuss issues of critical concern. We believe strongly that we will make Africa better one of these days with consolidated efforts. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is D. Kafinas Nentu, and I've been joined by Kabbalah from DR Congo. The next time you will see us again will be on next week, Saturday. We shall come with you with another edition of a conversation that we hope will lead the way for developing and moving Africa forward. Thank you so much and have a very good weekend. We look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Bye-bye.